to make sure that they're aware of it. But I'm here now, so let me know when we're ready to get going.
Yeah, we'll give it another. There's only 2 people
Okay.
attending right now, so
You are the ambassador, Chris Ginzig.
there we go.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like trying to balance with my wife is stuck in traffic at the moment. She can't be at home like right now, with a kid. And I was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah. Yes.
watch the TV. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Yep.
I thought it was an interesting note today about the sledding. And I'm looking over here, and maybe some quick things we could do is there's a bike rack right at the bottom of the sledding hill.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at the little power boxes. I don't know if you can move the big green one, but maybe that cable box. But yeah, that would be just a little side note I made. If people sled here, make sure there's not hard objects at the very bottom of the hill. I mean, most people I see sled over at Washington, and that's where I used to go sledding, and a little bit of McIntyre. But yeah, I forgot this is a nice hill for sledding here.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock.
Great.
Lasheen, let us know when we go live.
You are live right now.
Hello, everybody. This is Rian Anthony. You are tuned into the Tonsler Park public input session. We are just going to wait for a minute or two to see if we get more attendees in the meeting, and then it will be starting shortly. So just give us another minute. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have 6 attendees. So we'd like to welcome everybody that is attending at the moment. Hopefully we'll get some more folks. Again, we just would like to thank you for participating in this public input session. I'll just give you a quick summary of how today is going to go, or this evening is going to go. We'll be doing introductions to the park and recreation staff that has put this together. And from there, we will be doing a PowerPoint presentation that is split into 2 sections. We'll be talking about one concept, and then we'll be asking for some feedback, public input, and then we're going to the second concept. And then we'll do the same thing there. And then the last section of the PowerPoint is basically asking you what you'd like to see in your park. Further ado, I'll kick it off. So again, welcome to the public input session for Tonsler Park. I'm Rian Anthony, and I'm the Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation. I oversee the Parks Division. Vic Arbor.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, Rian. All right. My name is Vic Garber. I'm the Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation, specifically the Recreation Division, all programs, athletics, adaptive, aquatic facilities, and recreation centers in the skate park. Thank you.
Chris Genzik.
Good evening, Chris Genzik. I'm the City of Charlottesville's Parks and Trails Development Manager and Planner, and I do a lot of the public input sessions for our park planning processes.
I'll be sharing the screen, and let me know if everybody can see the screen.
Looks good.
Good. Thank you so much. So again, welcome. A quick presentation for the March 22nd public input session. That was a mouthful. What we will do is I'll hand it off to Chris Genzik. He's just going to tell us the history of how the master plan came about and what things we have done. And from there, I'll jump in and go into further detail. Chris Genzik.
Thank you, Rian. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Parks Department, over 15 years, I believe, so I've done a number of plans. Tonsler Park was one of them that we did, I think, starting in 2012. Took about a year, then we ran it over to council and the Planning Commission for approval. It was approved in 2013. So we're about 9 years away from when this plan was approved and the department began installing the different features that people had asked for. The planning process, we had a number of meetings here at the community center, and some of the similar questions were asked. What would you like to keep? What needs to be upgraded? What would you add? What might you subtract? By going through that process, we determined that the playground had been renovated. The community center was not changed at all. The basketball courts were renovated in the same area that they used to be in, and nice lights were added. We took down some fencing in the rear area to make what was a formal kind of baseball field into a more open play area, so more different kinds of games could be played. We added a spray ground and added a trail around the back, that paved trail system. We also built the staircase up to 5th Street to provide easier access for folks coming from that direction. What was not built and why we're here this evening is the notion of a field house, which would be somewhat attached to and behind the rec center. Rian will tell you more about that later. If we needed additional parking, we had drawn some areas out where that might be added should we need it. And we have a few concepts for that. And also a picnic shelter, something under roof that would probably have nice grills and things in it. Those are the three pieces of the puzzle that we have not yet built. And we wanted to come back to the community and get some input because it's been almost 10 years. Things may be different in people's minds about how they'd like to see the park used and what types of things they'd like to see. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Rita.
Thank you so much again. We just got a chat that there's a lot of people watching on Facebook. Thank you so much, Lasheen, for sending the link out. Hopefully more and more people will join this public input session. Again, as Chris mentioned, this was part of the master plan adopted in 2013. Again, the master plan basically plans out what the community want to see within their park. Most people, we got a lot of emails, questions, why are we focusing on a field house, additional parking? What we as the Parks and Recreation planning team decided was to do a different approach. And the approach was to inform the community we are 9 years into this master plan. We have two things that we have not completed from the master plan. So we thought we shall present this to the community, not to say either or that this is on this master plan, but the question we want to ask is, I know it's been 9 years. Is the community still on board with the last two amenities that was presented in the approved master plan, or does the community value or have a different perspective on those two amenities? The two amenities again is the field house and the additional or proposed parking. But before we get into the conceptual side of things, just want to give you a quick step of the park planning improvements that we did starting in 2019. We started off with the basketball courts, roughly around about 100,000 that the city invested in that. We also spent close to $24,000 of fitness trail. That's a trail right around out there. And then we also built a staircase so that you can access that. Instead of walking all the way around to the front entrance of the park, you can access the park at the back. Then our last project was the splash pad and restroom. That's what we added for $1.8 million. So again, with the approved master plan, the city invested a lot of amenities and money to improve the park according to the community. Okay, so again, as I move to the next slide, again, we're going to start with a parking lot. Again, as I mentioned before, this is something that the design team and the Parks and Rec planning team decided to look at, is like, okay, we have these two amenities that we did not complete. We'll show it to the community and ask the community, do you still want to move forward with this, or do you have any ideas? Okay, so parking lot, option 1. So again, the option 1, and I'll just to orientate you, this is Cherry Avenue. This is the entrance of the park. This is the recreation center. Everybody knows that are familiar with Tonsler that we have this big circle out there. What we are planning on proposing in option 1 is doing a parking lot in that breezeway or this passive area that the basketball courts are in this area, and we're planning on putting parking in. Only one ingress and egress out there. We add additional 2 ADA parking spots, and by doing that, we will add additional 22 parking spaces. At the moment in Tonsler, out in this parking and around about there, we have 23. 22 is regular and 1 adaptive parking or ADA parking. So that's one concept. The next concept is a similar concept, but a few things that you need to note. We eliminate the circle. As you can see, there's a circle. We eliminate the circle. We then extend the middle row all the way down. We push back very close to the recreation center, but we save the existing trees, and we put 2 additional ADA parking, which is very close to the facility. What we also decided is to put 2 entrances to the parking spots. So you can come in from this side, or you can go all the way down and take a right and park in those parking. By doing that, we have increased additional parking to 44 additional parking spots. So those are the 2 different designs, and both designs have pros and cons. So I'll start with the pros. The pros is, on any given day, I believe today, Chris said there's roughly around about 60 people out at the park. Parking lot is full. It is very hard to come through the park and find parking. So by adding in option 1 or 2, we add additional parking. Is it enough? Absolutely not. But at least it has additional parking. The con to all this is, I understand that people love this space where they get to relax, have family meetings, enjoy the beautiful breeze, and also watch the basketball in that space. That's the con. We also lose, and I want to use the word lose, we'll be moving 10 trees. So 10 trees will be affected in this, and we'll move those 10 trees some other place within the park, So again, as you know, at Tonsler, our parking has always been an issue. So now what I will do is tell us your thoughts. So this is the time that if you want to put something in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can answer some questions. Okay.
Leon, did we want to add what we heard earlier, like the option 2B, where we only do the flagpole loop that gets us 19 spaces, and we don't go into the green space? because after all the public input the past 2 days, there's kind of an option 2B where we only alter the existing lot to add those spaces.
Yep.
So that folks know that we're already kind of looking at a, like a half of option 2 type thing. That's
Totally
also on the table. Yeah.
Totally understand. So what we heard from our previous input sessions, the 2B, as Chris mentioned, is doing absolutely nothing with the green space, as you can see, but eliminating the circle, pushing back the curb all the way to the 2 trees closer to the recreation center, and adding parking on the side, and also adding parking to there. And I believe, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, that constitute an additional 19 parking spots, correct?
Yeah, that's the first review, is that would get us an extra 19 from what's there now.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay, so if we have any questions, please raise your hand.
A couple people have been adding some questions and comments in the chat, but if you would like to speak, just hit the raise hand icon and we can bring you in. This might be a shyer group than earlier.
That's correct. That is correct.
We have
Again,
one hand that just came up, Stephen
Okay.
Johnson.
hello, Stephen.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
You
Yes,
can.
we can.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm a teacher, and so when you say talk about a shy crowd, I thought I would bail everybody out and have somebody participate.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. So I had put this in the chat, but I just real quickly wanted to say I really like the 2B option much better, from the standpoint of if we can get more parking from the existing pavement. That sounds quite a bit better than destroying part of the park to get pavement. Especially, I mean, I know that parking is a challenge there, but I would say a really large percentage of people who use this park walk there. Or bike there. So I think, that's something to keep in mind. The question I had though was from just looking at this recently and walking by there yesterday, I really wondered, is it possible to get another half dozen spaces up by the tennis court, the part of the parking lot that's entered from 5th Street?
So, good question. There is a possibility of expansion, but we got very small real estate before the grade drops. At the present moment, we do have 7, but it's a good option. It's a good option also to add to the upstairs as well.
Great, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Any other questions?
Do we want to read some of the comments or questions just for the people that are watching
Sure.
live on Facebook so they know
Yeah.
the conversation?
So folks are talking about the 2B option. They would like to see mostly the existing concrete that we have, and adding more parking spaces there. Folks are talking about upstairs, the tennis court, adding additional spots there. Folks are also talking about they do not want to remove the trees in that existing parking lot. It's really great when there's basketball games and people like to sit under the shade. Is it possible to add additional parking on 5th Street entrance next to the tennis courts? I mentioned that already. People are liking parking quasi option 2B. Thank you, Chris, for that. 2B. Yes. So yeah. So forgive me if I missed this. What will happen to very popular basketball courts in option 2? Good question. I'll address that. The basketball, if we do option 2 with increasing parking, we will not touch any of the basketball courts. Basically, the parking will be butted up real close to the basketball courts, but the basketball courts will not be affected at all. Okay, any other questions?
Someone asked in the chat, is there any possibility for the city to lease spaces from the usually empty parking lot at Salvation Army, the old KFC site?
That's also a very good question. We got that in previous spots. I believe that is an option to explore as well.
Yes, Rion, this is Vic. I remember when we would have Sounds of Summer or events at Tonsler, we did have, an understanding with some of those businesses, so we can look into that.
There's a comment also in the chat about the connection trail at 7.5 Street and Greenstone on 5th. I believe that trail, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, will be completed hopefully in the spring.
Yes, that trail is effectively open. I think there's some mulching to do and some minor improvements. That is a on private property with the lease agreement through the nonprofit Ravenna Trails Foundation with the verbal agreement from the property owner that if and when they decide what they're going to do with that property, they would make public sidewalk and bike and trail connections part of that system. There are connections to Tonsler, but we did open the back fence. The trails are available to be used, and thank you to our local nonprofits in the Fifel Neighborhood Association for putting all that together.
Okay, thank you so much for the first section. What we will do is now we will be going to the field house. So before we get to the field house, again, this was part of the master plan, and the word field house at the present time was explained not like a university field house. It was mostly explained where different types of activities can be housed within a specific facility. What the master plan called for was, if we have basketball, can we play basketball? If we have summer camp, can that space be used for summer camp? Can this space be used for 2 different activities at the same given time? Can this space be used for family functions? Can this space be used for town hall meetings? And what we have looked at with that information, we have found out that the best solution was to add an addition to the recreation center. As you can see, the footprint is to put a full-size basketball. And the reason why we had a full size was that if kids would like to play on half court, they can, and other kids can do another activity. Also, we'll look at, if you had a summer camping year, can you have 2 different activities playing by having some way of a curtain to cut that space off. Volleyball can be used for volleyball if we have to use this as a family reunion or a rental for wedding shower. We'll be able to utilize by putting a cover over the court so that it can be multi-use. So the big question was, how do we do this? So we, with the design team, we came up with this, again, concept was to put a concept of a basketball court in there. With that, due to the code, Tonsler Recreation Center only has 3 stalls in the ladies and 1 stall in the men and a urinal, and that does not meet code, so we had to add additional restrooms. The other thing we also thought that was necessary was storage. Where are we going to store all these activities or equipment we needed a storage room, and the other one is the mechanical room. So what we have decided was to add a breezeway. What a breezeway is, instead of butting the recreation center up real close to the building, if you are going to do that, it's going to change the roofing structure to that. And we thought it's best to separate the two buildings and have a breezeway. The nicest thing about the breezeway is, as you know, we have a little small shelter or shady area here. We'll still be able to have that, and we'll still be able to have the existing trees without touching the existing trees. You remember, as Chris mentioned, we do have a trail. It will connect perfectly with a trail around the field house. And also, if you remember, this is the playground. There's ADA accessible ramp to there. It will not affect that. So these are just a few conceptual designs that we have. This is what it will look like conceptually. This is what it will call, this is the breezeway. Our roof and the integrity of the building and the historical look to Tonsler Recreation Center will still be the exact same. We will be able to put glass just on the top section, whereby we allow more light inside to the center. And this is what it will look like if you're facing the parking lot looking out. It's going to be a tall structure, but since we have those trees, and in the summer they bloom really well, and the background will basically be blended in. So that's concept number one. Concept number two, again, similar design, just more on a slant, and we switch out the storage and restroom to the other side. By doing so, we only we have to replace one tree. We also take up a bit of real estate in this area round about there, and this is what it will look like at the end from a conceptual design. Something similar to the first concept, but it's just angled to make sure that it looks somewhat aesthetic, shall I say. So that is the two, again, concepts. So at this time, we will open up the floor for your thoughts. Do you like the field house? Do you not like the field house? What concept, if you do like the field house, what type of concepts do you like? Other questions would be, okay, I do not want the field house anymore. And then what other amenities would you like to see in the park?
So first up, we have Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Rian. I was just wondering if you could maybe recap for us what needs raised by the community in 2012 led to the inclusion of the field house in the master plan. I think for those of us who didn't participate, it might be nice to get just a recap of what the community was saying at that time.
Sure. And I will spearhead it to Chris, because I believe Chris was physically there. So Chris, can you just give a quick synopsis of 2012 and how this came about with the field house?
If I recall from the meetings, the hype boxing and mentorship type program had started at that point in time over here at Tonsler. One of the things in the meetings was the community centers, kind of a little quieter space. You know, the kids in here coloring and playing games and stuff. And then when people come in and do a sweaty thing, and there's older people in here, more active kind of stuff. Should we separate those uses in the community center? And that's one of the reasons the field house idea came out. As Vic mentioned earlier today, indoor space for basketball in inclement weather and in the wintertime was another thing that came up at the time when we were discussing these things. That's what I recall. Vic, you might have had some other thoughts today that aren't popping into my head today from when we did that plan, but those were the two. And then also it could be used for bigger community meetings and other things like aerobics, pickleball, summer camps, a lot of different programming that the community center currently is not laid out to really accommodate those types of uses.
Mhm.
Sure, Chris, you've spoken to most of those. I attended, I believe we had 3 meetings at that time. But the individuals that I spoke to and some of those that spoke out were looking for an alternative gymnasium indoor space where they love the basketball courts, they love the lights, but they'd love to have an indoor space to continue activity. And then exactly what you said, there were some parents there that would love to have a quality indoor experience for after school time. An early bird preschool time was mentioned, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, what you said about the pickleball. And there is also a need in the city where we plan to do a comprehensive master plan so far. Once council approves the capital budget, but we're hoping to do a comprehensive master plan and actually do a study of needs for the best use of all of our facilities and the best needs and what the community actually values. And one thing that we do know that we are short on gymnasium. So that came up in that meeting and it's still true today.
Thank you.
Sarah, you still have your hand raised?
Yeah, am I on mute?
No, yep, you're good. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that recap. I just wanted to respond. That was immensely helpful. So I'm a member of the Fifield Neighborhood Association, I'm the secretary, and maybe just to add a few reflections on what we've been hearing the community say through the Cherry Avenue small area planning process. Folks mentioned numerous times the need for some kind of community gathering place. And I think one of the things you all mentioned specifically, like a place to have birthday parties, a place they could rent out for receptions and things like that. And then the other thing that I think this space could assist with is folks want programming for young people. And so I think one of my questions would be like, what funding might be available to actually provide the kinds of programming that you were talking about with a preschool or with after school activities for kids. Yeah, just wondering, once it's built, like, is there a commitment from the city to follow through on actually meeting that need for programming? Because that definitely is something that we have heard consistently from our community as a huge need. And then I guess is that I know we're in this big budget discussion about Beaufort and the city schools reconfiguration overall. But it might be nice to think about this field house in the context of the renovations that may be made at Beaufort. And like you all said, just an assessment of where are the best places to create those uses for the community, because there's definitely a lot of support for after school activities for kids and for gathering spots. But yeah, I personally don't have a strong opinion about the field house itself, but definitely I think the needs are still there that this field house is trying to meet.
Okay, Sarah, this is Vic. Really appreciate your comments on programming, and I like what I'm hearing. When we originally wrote up the capital improvement project, and we revamped that and updated it, I believe it was in 2017 when things, after the 4 other options were completed, the basketball court and the trail and finally did the spray ground, we included an operational budget along with the CIP that did include additional staffing, actually day camp staff, morning staff, evening staff, for a variety and plethora of programs that that basically gave us a baseline to begin the programming process. So an operations budget was included in that original plan. Now, if this goes through and the field house is endorsed by the public and then ultimately by city council with funding, then we would have to revamp that plan. But we wouldn't want a field house unless we had programming money as well as maintenance funding.
Up next, we have Peter.
Hello, I'm Peter Krebs. Most of you know me through Piedmont Environmental Council. I'm also the parent of a full career student who's graduating from CHS, played basketball starting in the Clark gym in kindergarten, and just finished with the CHS varsity team. I'm a huge supporter of basketball. I've spent a lot of time on basketball courts, even at Tonsler Park. But I don't think actually a basketball facility is a really top priority for the community. Part of the reason is the city is quite different now than it was in 2012. Carver wasn't what it is today. We didn't really have a Smith Aquatic Center, and also the Boys and Girls Club, I believe, was pretty new at the time. And add to that key. So we've got 4 facilities that serve a lot of this function, and you might add to that Buford, and the field house actually, to me, looks like the Buford gym. So in a moment when we have really limited resources, I would much prefer that athletics, basketball focused resources be directed to Buford. Buford's just a few blocks away. I do think it is interesting to have a larger, more flexible indoor space at Tonsler, but not this large. This, I mean, as the photo shows, it's a very significant change to the park. And at best, I think it's questionable whether it's necessary. We're doing a master plan, as you mentioned, and we're going to have to push and get that master plan done because it's necessary. If there is still, when you look at the citywide inventory and the citywide need, if there's still a need for yet another basketball facility, let's do it. But I don't think now, right before we do the master plan, is the time to say, let's do this one in Tonsler Park.
Thank you so much. I think just a quick comment. I appreciate the comments. Great thoughts and sparks and rec. Hopefully, if we get it approved, we'll be starting on a master plan. Again, we do have, at the moment, we have $1.8 million in our capital improvement for Tonsler Park. So we are trying to look at ways of how to utilize that funds at the same time. Okay, I think we have 2 more hands raised.
3. Up
3.
next is Stephen Johnson.
Thank you again, and I really appreciate the care and detail you guys are providing to this presentation and listening to input. I spend a lot of time walking around the neighborhood of Fifeville and often through Buford and over to Forest Hill Parks and then over to Tonsler, and all 3 are very popular spaces that people spend time in and certainly can often walking by at Buford hear the basketball courts there being very actively used outside of school hours. So it seems to me like, as Peter was saying, you know, that is a very nearby facility. I wanted to touch on something that Sarah talked about earlier in terms of you know, community meeting space, and then was brought up about, you know, places that you can have a birthday party. It seems to me there's certain times of year when Forest Hills Park has both of the pavilions rented. And I see other times where people don't rent it, but I think sort of camp out there to have it for the day on a more informal basis. So I feel like instead of kind of this monstrosity of a basketball court, that would really change kind of the whole feel of the park. I just wonder, is there options for something smaller, maybe even just open, something a little bit substantial in terms of a shelter, but that's still open to the outside, that could be rented, right? That's a larger rentable space like exists at the pavilion. I think it's called at Forest Hills Park. So to me, that would be a better use of the money. I'm also very concerned that construction costs have gone up significantly since the time, and so I don't think the budgeted amount would cover this building. And I would much rather see all that money be used for other amenities. And I believe Sarah would be the expert on this, that the small area plan for Cherry Avenue included quite a number of things that could be done to enhance the use of Tonsler Park for the community.
Thank you so much. And that's correct. The small area plan talks about improvements to the existing recreation center. We got a few comments in earlier as well, is to expand certain spaces so that we can have indoor birthday parties as well, and also expand the existing footprint to the recreation center as well. So points well taken. Thank you so much.
Up next, we have Sarah.
Thanks. I just wanted to reiterate and highlight a couple of things that I've put in the chat, as I'm just thinking through this a little bit more on the fly and trying to kind of think about how it relates to what the community has been raising at the neighborhood association. I do want to underscore that I think the needs that the community raised are still there. But as other folks are commenting, I think I'm coming more into agreement with the idea that there are other facilities that can help meet these needs, and they are more programming needs perhaps than space needs, especially if we are able to get the investments in Buford that we hope for. And then I also just wanted to highlight that we do now have a private business in the community that's offering rental space for birthday parties, and they are awesome. And they have been an active member of the businesses on Cherry Avenue, as well as active in our small area planning. They're just an outstanding group of folks at Royalty Events. So maybe just to ask the city to think about connecting with Ms. White, who owns that business. If you do decide to go ahead in some form or fashion with this, trying to make sure that this space is not in competition with her business space, because she's a really valued member of our business community, and her business really gives back to the community a lot. So I think we just want to make sure that if we went forward with a field house in some way, that it was in alignment with, instead of competing with, local business.
Thank you so much. Any other hands raised? I noticed that there's a lot of Facebook activity. I know we're trying to get them onto the platform, but I know a few people are making comments of, a dog park, additional apartments. People are liking option B2. People are liking spots by the tennis courts. They are enjoying the green space. People are mentioning, some people mentioning no field house option. Other comments go forth with the field house to offer all these programs, as i.e. after school programs for kids, additional court space, summer activities. So I just wanted to mention that we're also getting comments on Facebook. Okay, since we have no hands, this is the opportunity. Again, if you feel, as we mentioned, we do have $1.8 million sitting in our CIP fund. And again, just to give you a quick synopsis, once 9 years ago, when we adopted the master plan, we had a lot of support behind implementing and funding for these amenities. Almost every year we got funded for the basketball courts, the splash pad, the trail. But I believe in 2017 or 18, we requested additional funds for the field house because we were going to be ready to put out a RFQ, a RFP proposal to get an A&E firm to look at a field house. But unfortunately, we did not get any funds since 18 till today. And again, this is why we value the community's input to find out, as a few people mentioned, in 2013, the master plan got approved. And we just want to find out, is the community still in support of the last two amenities? If not, what else? Who do you like to see? So again, just previously in conversations with folks, we had a in-person session on Monday. Folks were talking about a shelter structure, for large gatherings. People talked about a fitness trail, since there's a trail. Some type of fitness activity at the back as well. So again, we are open to, this is the time. We tell us your thoughts. What other things are we missing, or what are you guys looking for? So I'll push it back to you, and think we have one hand raised.
First that we have is Peter.
Hey, thank you for that. So of the two things that you presented, I would say that actually, this may shock the world to hear, but the parking is a genuine public need. And for the reasons I described right now, the field house is not as much of a outstanding need. So if there are funds just sitting there that need to be spent, and perhaps you can, if I understand you correctly, they're not in this current CIP, but they're legacy funds that are on account. Perhaps prioritizing the parking over the field house, but I would also say, let's check back in with the community. What are your preferred ways to spend these monies? And I would think in this neighborhood, folks are going to be talking about Buford as their top priority. That's just me, though.
And you bring up a good point. This is the opportunity to give us your input on what the needs are. And thank you for your comments.
Up next we have Sarah.
Thanks. I just dropped the priorities that the community identified in the Cherry Avenue Small Area Planning process for Parks and Rec into the chat so that folks can see them. Hopefully they look familiar to folks, but these were the recommendations that were approved based on community feedback in March 2021. So they're pretty recent, and you'll notice that there is no ask for a field house. And this is what I've kind of been trying to work my way through, thinking about it in real time as we've been talking. But we did hear the need to expand, renovate, or reconfigure the current community building at Tonsler Park. There was an ask for extended outdoor seating at Tonsler Park, which it sounds like may align with some of the comments you were hearing in other meetings this week around a possible shelter instead of a field house. And then folks are really interested in having seating and bleachers at the basketball courts at Tonsler Park. And then just looking down, I think actually several of these have already been completed. Like we know that you guys have recently opened the gate at the back of Tonsler Park, which has been awesome. And then there's a request, PR7 is upgrading the existing field. And that feels like it might fit with some of the amenities that you're offering here. So maybe giving folks some more opportunities to say what would they like to see in that baseball field could be valuable. And then folks were also looking for event space and events and activating the amphitheater space. Folks, I think, really fondly remember some of the activities that used to go on there pre-pandemic and are excited about opportunities to bring some of that back. So those are the ones that jump out to me immediately, but just wanted to put those in the chat in case there's anybody else who's a resident in the neighborhood who sees something here that sparks a thought or an idea about what you'd like to see.
Thank you so much for putting that in the chat.
And thank you, Sarah. I'm not sure if it's been posted, or if we said it earlier, we will be talking about this at the next Pikeville Neighborhood Association meeting, which I believe is in about 2 weeks, sometime in April. So folks can also comment at that one.
I don't see any other hands raised and no other comments on Facebook than the ones that you already read.
Okay. Again, as I mentioned again, this is the opportunity to tell us your thoughts. Your thoughts of anything else you'd like to see within Tonsler Park. As I mentioned in our earlier Zoom meeting, more ideas is good.
Sarah, this is Vic. Thank you so much for sharing those ideas. I think that I guess what we're hearing is in lieu of the field house, we have some opportunities. And we have $1.8 million sitting in our capital account.
We can set it as just making Stephen is the original Tonsler master plan document available anywhere. I think we have a copy, but I don't think it's on our website. So if you can, we'll find a way of making it public. The Tonsler master plan documentation. Okay. I'll take this opportunity since we got a few minutes left. Once again, I do truly appreciate public input sessions. I believe that the community needs a voice, and this is the voice of the community. Quickly summary, as Vic mentioned, a lot of good ideas came out. People see the need of additional parking, but they do not want to interrupt green space. 2B option was very popular, using the existing concrete slab and to extend and do some modifications to add additional parking. Folks spoke about tennis court parking as well, looking upstairs. Also, we did hear that folks do not want to give up the green space. Totally understand in this session. Field house, there's a few people that agree to a field house. Other folks are saying, let's focus on the most recent data in our small area plan and possibly looking at that. As Sarah mentioned, there are modifications, upgrading the baseball field, looking at more programmatical space within the small area plan. And these are all good information that we received. So once again, thank you so much. And just a few people that I would like to thank. that to make this all possible. Number one, without the community, we would not have a virtual meeting. This is our second virtual meeting for the day. So I think it went off really well. Again, I would like to thank our IT support. Thank you so much for what you do to make this happen. And then also like to thank the Parks and Recreation planning team, Chris and Vic. Thank you so much for assisting and making this happen. And we really, really appreciate that. So what we are going to do, as Chris mentioned, we have another public session. I would like to make another session available at Tonsler Park next week. So see press release or a media page about a day where we're just going to be sitting at Tonsler Park for a few hours, asking people for their input. Since they are at the park, they are our users as well. So we want to get all that information. From there, we will gather all the information and look through all the information from the community and come up with a somewhat conceptual plan to move forward. Okay, last minute questions, Chris. Vic, any last parting words?
Appreciate all the public input. Go ahead, Vic.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I want to thank everyone for their input, and whether you wrote something in or you spoke out, it is important. And this community engagement process does work, and we are listening.
I'll just echo that and say have a wonderful evening, and I'm sure we'll speak to a lot of you again real soon as this evolves.
Okay. And again, Chris, can you, if people want to email, can you please give an email address? I'll talk to Chris because it looks like this microphone's off. So again, once we're done, you just put it in the chat too. If you have any questions or you want to email Chris Genzik, genzikc@charlottesville.gov. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.